Awesome. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko te rere te monga, ko tamaki te awa, ko Pākehā te iwi no tamaki makaurau ahau, ko Garvey toko whānau, ko Michael toko ingoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Kia ora, and thank you everyone. Thanks so much for having me Zoom in today. I'm very excited to have a little bit of a chat. Um, I thought that what I would do today is just kind of share a little bit about my story, and how I came to work in the food waste space. And then I'll kind of, talk a little bit about food waste in general, and then share with you a bit more about what I do at FoodPrint. And I think I'll just double check. We've got about an hour-ish. Is that right, Rosie?
5 minutes to an hour, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I'll try and zoom through so that we've got some time for questions at the end, because that's normally my favorite part of these kind of kōrero. Cool. So I thought I'd sort of start off having a little bit of a chat about food waste in general, because I think since I started FoodPrint, which is a food rescue app, and again, we'll get to it a little bit more at the end. What I found is that people, have a really good understanding that food waste is bad. But I think it's always good to set the scene with some of the super scary stats that go alongside it. And I think when I first started this journey, I would, get up and talk and be like, oh, our food system's totally broken and this and that. But I've sort of come to the realization that our food system is working exactly how we've designed it to. And it's not that the system itself is broken, it's that the system itself just is not set up in the way that it should for humans to continue taking the amount of food that we are currently taking. We've created this system where a third of the food that Papatūānuku provides for us is wasted. It's about 1.3 billion tons each year, and it's to the value of $1 trillion US, which is just so much money that none of us can really comprehend what that would actually be like. But it's definitely something that we really need to be thinking of, because in the next sort of 20 to 30 years, oh my gosh, where the world's population is expected to grow to sort of 9 to 10 billion people on Earth. And we need to be able to feed all of those people, but in a sustainable way, and in a world that's going to be ever changing with climate change. And the interconnectedness of climate change and our ability to feed ourselves is, it is very interconnected, I guess. And the more damage that we do to the way that we can grow our food, the more that we end up losing and wasting, or we risk ending up losing and wasting. And then it also can become harder to grow the food, and we just kind of end up in this weird kind of vortex of how we're going to feed ourselves. If you guys are familiar with the team at Project Drawdown, so they are an international think tank who focus on drawing down emissions, but they've identified reducing food waste as the number one action that we can take to fight the climate crisis. And in my opinion, food waste is just a problem that should not exist, and one that should be really easy for ourselves to solve. But as I said, I'm going to sort of talk you through a few bits here. So I thought to kind of think about the resources that are actually wasted when we're wasting food. What I wanted you guys to do is think about a loaf of bread. And I've chosen bread for this example because it is the number one wasted food item in the world. And in Aotearoa alone, we throw away about 29 million loaves of bread each year. And part of the reason that it is so widely wasted is that it's widely accessible. So it's, eaten right across the world. But it also usually only has sort of a short shelf life. We kind of throw away the ends of bread without really thinking about it. And it's relatively cheap as well. So I think a lot of people sort of don't necessarily make that connection of what they're actually wasting a lot of the time. But yeah, when it comes to bread, obviously the main ingredient in bread is flour, which comes from a crop of wheat. To grow that crop, you obviously need land, and about 1.4 billion hectares, or 26% of the world's agricultural land, is used to grow food that is wasted. I'll just repeat that one because that one's 26%, so over a quarter of the world's agricultural land is used to grow food that's wasted. Also, to grow food, we need, good rich soil. If anyone's tried to grow vegetables at home in clay or sand, it doesn't work so well. You need that really rich soil. And it needs to be nutrient dense as well. And every 5 seconds, we lose about a rugby field's worth of soil to soil degradation and erosion, but also to changes in how we're growing the land. And globally, we're on track to lose about 10% of crop yields by 2050 when it comes to soil. And I think one of my favorite examples around how, changes to how we're using land is in Pukekohe. I'm obviously in Tamaki Makaurau, so Pukekohe is just sort of the southern end of Auckland. And that's one of the most nutrient-dense areas of growing food in the country. A lot of our potatoes and onions come from that area. Yet at the moment, we're carving up the farms and building houses on that. And obviously, as our population grows, we need housing, but what we really need is high density housing that is close to public transport in cities where people are living, and we need to leave the farm land to grow the food, because otherwise how are we going to be how are we going to be feeding the people that we're putting in these houses? Sorry, I could go on many tangents in this conversation, so I'll try and keep us on track. Crops then obviously also need water to grow food. And the World Resource Institute estimates that inside the 1.3 billion tons of food that's wasted each year is 45 trillion litres of water. And this is all going on while the UN says that about 2 billion, so sort of a quarter of people on Earth, don't have access to safe drinking water every day. And if you think back to our loaf of bread, Love Food, Hate Waste New Zealand says that every single loaf of bread requires about 1,125 litres of water to make it. And then again, remembering that we're wasting 29 million loaves of bread in the country each year. On top of that, we've got obviously the fuel, the power that's used in, harvesting and processing, transportation, turning the wheat into flour, and then the flour into bread. So there's a whole lot of emissions produced at every one of these stages, as well as resources that are being used. And then if you're talking about bread that you're purchasing at the supermarket, that's normally coming in some kind of plastic packaging. That's usually single use as well, or as I like to refer to it, no use packaging, if we're ending up wasting the food that comes in it. And obviously at every stage along or every step along this, there's that personal human interaction. And so it is sort of just becoming a waste of labor. And I always think of it of like, how would you feel if your boss just chucked away a third of the work that you were doing? Pretty devastating, I would think. Yet we are okay doing that to Papatūānuku. And then lastly, at every stage, there is money. So we're literally just putting money in the bin when we are wasting food. Again, you've paid for that loaf of bread, so why aren't you doing it the honour of eating it? And then the majority of food that gets wasted ends up in landfill, where as it decomposes, it emits methane. And methane is a powerful greenhouse gas with up to 30 times the heat trapping capabilities of carbon dioxide. So yeah, the food that we waste globally accounts for up to 10% of total greenhouse gas emissions. the aviation industry is around 2.5, but there's obviously aviation emissions included in food waste emissions due to transport of food. But yeah, we're kind of running out of time. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on all of this, but I think we're kind of on track to soar well above 3 degrees warming if we keep going in the way that we are. And with that, obviously, brings a lot more climate events. We've already seen climate events that have affected our food production in Aotearoa. Namely the Auckland anniversary floods. Like, I just have this really distinct memory from that day of, despite my own being standing outside in the rain for several hours in that rain, but coming home and watching the news with like onions just rolling down the road because they were sort of left in the paddock to dry out before the final harvest. And then also Cyclone Gabrielle, where we lost, kumara crops, apples. I think we can all remember those images of like apples just covered in mud as well. And the results of those events was that for the season after that, we had reduced supply. The supply that we did have was more expensive. But we also seem to have forgotten quite quickly because things sort of have managed to come back. But yeah, a lot of those crops that were lost were also, those apple trees were, they weren't baby trees. They were, mature trees that had been around for a long time, sort of, I think 10, 20 years, a lot of them. And so the ability for us to grow back those plants, that obviously takes time and can have that ongoing effect on our overall food supply. When we talk about the hospitality and food retail sectors, which is sort of the area that I play in, this accounts for about 30% of the total food waste. And research conducted by Wasteman's and the University of Otago a few years ago found that 60% or more of the food that's wasted in hospitality is perfectly edible food. So it's food that's being prepared but not consumed. So a lot of that is, some of it is plate waste. So serving sizes being too big or containing things that consumers don't like. But then a huge amount of it being sort of the cabinet type food, which again is the majority of what we deal with at FoodPrint, where things have been produced but not sold on that day. And then according to a hospitality consultant's mean business, for every dollar of profit that's thrown out, an additional $3 of profit must be made just to break even. And this is obviously an industry that has super, super tight margins. So it is really important that they are retaining that value in their businesses. Cool. I think, oh, sorry, I kind of got a little bit behind on my slides. But climate events here and the idea of throwing food in the bin. Don't worry, this is something that we did at FoodPrint, and none of those donuts actually ended up in the bin. They were all consumed and delicious. But yeah, I thought I would share a little bit about me. So I sort of learned really early on in my career that I didn't want to work in an industry that I wasn't passionate about. I had a job when I was at university where I was selling radio ads, and what I found was that I was really good at the selling, but I was not passionate at all about the product. And then was really lucky for my early career to be in roles where I was really passionate about the products that I was working with. I'm also the child of an entrepreneur, so the idea of starting my own business was really like not that scary for me because it was something that was super normalized for me from a very young age. Don't get me wrong, because it's totally terrifying in a lot of ways. But yeah, I think a lot of people often say to me like, oh my gosh, you're so brave, or it must be so scary doing your own thing. But again, just because I sort of grew up in that environment, that was just always my normal. So I think for me, it was very much a case of when and not if I'd start my own business. And I knew that obviously it would be something that I'm passionate about, and food being that. I think my sort of interest in sustainable food as well really started when I was a teenager. And I can remember being in a geography class where we were sort of learning about dairy farming and environmental impacts. And that's what this slide is sort of all about here. And I can remember sort of coming out of that class and just being like, why do we grow crops to feed to animals to then eat the animals when we can just cut the animals out and just eat the crops that we're growing. And so that was sort of the minute that I became vegetarian. And I just really like this image by Oatly, who's a large, well, they're actually an international oat milk brand, but yeah, I think it just really puts that thought of me at 16 into pictures in a really beautiful way. So yeah, I think that sort of has always been yeah, like an interest and a passion and something that was really instilled in me from that young age. Fast forward a few years, and while I was on my uni breaks, I spent my summers in Colorado. Obviously, it's their winters, and I worked on the ski resorts, or in the ski resorts in sort of, it doesn't look super luxury, but it was quite a luxury hotel. That's me and one of my colleagues doing like we did buffets, so mostly buffet breakfast. So think about, staying in a hotel and those insane buffet breakfasts. And this is also the States. So the bigger, it was very much a bigger than everything kind of approach to those. And then we also did events. And the whole idea with those buffets was that, they had to be stocked full of food from the minute the doors opened till the minute the doors closed. The last guest needed to have as many options to eat as the first guest did. But what the result of that would be that we'd shifts, but it was often way more than what we could eat. And beyond that, we weren't actually allowed to take the food home. I was never very good at following that rule though. But yeah, it was pretty devastating having to throw out, like I can just remember huge shaker dishes filled with eggs and stuff that would just go straight in the bin. And then I went on to do a few more OEs. My last OE, I was in London where I worked for HelloFresh, which is a food tech, international meal kit service. And this was a few years before they made their way here to Aotearoa. But this was really my introduction into food tech as well. So the changes in the way that we source and purchase and even consume our food, and the role that tech kind of plays in that space now. But there was also a lot of conversations around how, as a company, we would help to reduce food waste by customers getting exactly the right amount of ingredients that was needed for recipes, which I think was a really good thing. Though don't get me started on packaging waste there. While I was there, the company was in the process as well of moving from a sort of contracted picking and packing facility where all of the boxes of food were packed up into their own custom built one. And during that process, someone much higher up than me decided that they needed to pack 2,500 boxes, and that was the number that was really going to test this new platform, this new facility. But that we were not going to count those 2,500 boxes in our weekly box count, and that someone was going to need to find a solution of what we would do with those boxes. And it kind of got passed around, and no one in the business really wanted to touch it until one of the founders kind of went, "Oh, don't worry, guys, I got it." Patrick did not got it. About 2 days before this event was to take place, I got this SOS from Patrick, who needed some help filling out some paperwork, and my boss did not see me again for the rest of the week. But Patrick's plan was that we were going to put these 2,500 boxes in national rail stations throughout London and also into other offices. So that's Patrick and a customer. And basically what we did with that was that we would give them to customers for the price that they wanted to pay for them. The box retailed just below £40. We had people paying anything from £1 to £100 for them, and then all of the money that was that was made over those 2 days that we did this activation for went to a London food rescue charity called the Felix Project. They work in a similar way to a lot of our food rescue organisations across Aotearoa. One of the big ones we have is Kiwi Harvest, who run through a few different regions. They're not in Nelson, and I cannot for the life of me right now remember who your main one is, but you guys, I'm sure, likely know. But yeah, over those 2 days, we raised almost £40,000 that was given to the Felix Project, and what that was able to do was open up the ability for they were able to put that money and invest it into a new temperature controlled vehicle, which meant that they were able to open up other areas of London that they were able to rescue food from, and help feeding thousands more people. And so I think, like, while I maybe didn't really click on that project, but it really did just kind of ignite those earlier memories of throwing food away, and really helped cement for me that that's an area that I wanted to continue working in. Yeah, and so I left London and went to Stockholm for a year. And there I ended up working, or I ended up doing a web development course. So in the background there is some of the code that I built, and the quite bad but fruit shop that I built. Again, this was meant to be a bike shop, but again, food just kept coming through for me, and I was also using it as a way to help. I picked fruit. I must have been also learning different fruit names and in my Swedish classes at that time as well. So it was kind of ticking two boxes for me. And I think the reason that I ended up doing this course was that I would get really frustrated in my previous role at HelloFresh of my lack of tech ability or knowledge. And so it was really great for me to be able to kind of take this course and fill in some of the gaps, but also, in a way that was helping me look to what I'd be doing next. And being a student in Scandinavia, I was always looking for ways to save money. A couple of friends introduced me to some apps where you could get really great deals on food that might otherwise go to waste. And it was also a really great way of exploring a new city through food, which is one of the best parts about living overseas. And yeah, the first time I used one of these apps, I got this ball of fresh mozzarella cheese, and I can just remember like eating it because it was my entire dinner for that night. And it was the equivalent of about 50 New Zealand cents instead of about $7. So as you might imagine, I was pretty hooked at that point. And then sort of thinking, this is such a great idea. I wonder if anyone is doing this in New Zealand. Nobody's doing this in New Zealand. Hey, I'm going to do this in New Zealand. So within a few months of that experience, I was actually on the plane home with this idea, but sort of not really any idea of how I'd get there. So yeah, kind of networked and found some people, put up posts like this anywhere that I could. And then I got introduced to an incredible team of developers. That's Lena, Igor, and Saha, who I partnered with to bring FoodPrint to life. And I'd sort of met with quite a few different people by that point, but when I met them, I really knew that we sort of had that alignment. They really understood the project, and our values really aligned. And I did everything from building my logo to building my app, and I still work with them today. So really lucky to have them on my side. So yeah, that was I got home sort of in the middle of 2018, and June 2019, FoodPrint went live in the App Store. So it was a pretty whirlwind year as well. I thought I would play a little video so you can see how the app works, which should come next. Actually. Oh, sorry, I think I managed to. Oh, sorry. I don't know if you guys could actually hear the sound through that. It was playing in my headphones very loud, which is why I took them out and paused them. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that's essentially what I do. So FoodPrint is a food rescue app. If there's anyone in the room that doesn't have the app on their phone, please get out your phone right now and give us a download. Once you do that, you can find food available to rescue near you. You can apply filters based on your location, your dietary preferences, or your price. You can make your selections within the app in about 3 clicks. You sort of saw that process, but I do know the video goes quite fast. And then you get a countdown timer until the until the eatery closes. Um, Everything on the app is sold for a discount, so from at least 30% off, but often going up to sort of 70, 80, 90. There's even a few eateries that put stuff on from time to time with 100% discount. They're obviously not worried about the financial return for them. They just don't want to see their food going to waste. Um, and I want to also be really clear that what I'm talking about here is amazing quality food. You know, it's salads that have been made that morning, cakes baked fresh that day, sushi that's been rolled, all of that sort of food. Like a lot of what we work with is sort of cafes and bakery style food, where if you walked in 10 minutes before they closed, they would sell you that exact same food. It just, for one reason or another, has not sold. We get told that it can be, you know, everything from, you know, slightly normal. People's movements have changed significantly post pandemic. We all tend to work from home a little bit here and there, or a lot more than we used to. But we don't necessarily do it consistently either. So, you know, we might work from home on Tuesday one week. So the cafes are used to Tuesdays being quieter, but then all of a sudden we're in on a Tuesday. And so their abilities to forecast have sort of gone upside down. And also at the moment, people are just generally spending a little bit less, which has made it really hard for businesses to forecast around that as well. Um, and yeah, we've got a good little community of eateries throughout the Nelson region. I think the next slide, yeah, there's a few of them there. There are a few more, a couple of other ones that I really love in your region are FSL Foods and Good For. They kind of have slightly different food from the standard cafe. And there's also, we've got an on the spot, I think it's in Richmond. Sorry, I'm not totally 100% sure of the exact addresses of all of my eateries. And we are also speaking to a few Foursquares and foodstuffs businesses at the moment. So please do keep an eye on things in that space as well. And then this just gives you a little bit of an idea of where we operate throughout the country. So kind of most of the main centres, there's definitely still a few left, but we're working on expanding to more places over the coming wee while. Yeah, and I think that's everything that I had kind of prepared for there. So why don't I maybe stop sharing and then I can hopefully see you guys, because when I was sharing I could not see you. But yeah, happy to take questions. How do you want to facilitate that, Rosie?
Wonderful. Thanks, Michael. What we shall do, oh, round of applause is coming your way, by the way.
Thank you.
What we should do is, if anyone's got questions, I tend to speak it into your ears more easily. So has anyone got some questions? Lucy, go for it.
I was just going to ask, how much does it cost a retailer to be listed as a FoodPrint? How much does it cost to be listed on the app?
Yeah, so we don't take there's no like joining or membership fee for eateries, so it's free for them to join. What happens is we take a service fee of 15% on items that sell, and that's across the board. So everyone on the platform has the same service fee. I'm very open about that. I really want it to be fair and transparent, and that includes the payment fees that go along with that. So yeah, that is all that we take from the eateries, and we also pay back the money to the eateries on a weekly basis. So it depending on what discounts the eateries choose, they are ending up with at least covering their, like, if they kind of do between like a 30 and a 50 or 60%, they usually cover their cost and a little bit more. Once it gets above that, it might go slightly in the other direction, but again, something coming back to them better than nothing. And they've also got that benefit of a new customer walking through their door as well.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was the same question.
So the app's free then?
Yeah, to download.
So to download the app from the consumer site, that's all free?
Yeah, the app's also free for the consumers. So again, the only thing that a consumer is paying for is the actual food. And you will see on the app the original price of the food, as well as the discounted price. So you'll be able to see what discount that you're getting. Yeah.
It's a question at the back.
Yeah, if this might sound a bit contrary, that's the way I come across sometimes. This is supporting the existing way of farming, isn't it?
Asking whether it's supporting the existing model rather than changing that model would be.
Yeah, I guess, like, in a sense it is. I think what it is doing is it's a step in the direction of behavior change, and really getting people to actually think about and deal with their waste. So whilst, oh sorry, I just had a very loud motorbike. Whilst I mean, I would never, I mean, the question I think was asked, it's supporting the existing way of farming. I am definitely not a farmer or a grower beyond some vegetables that get eaten by slugs. But I think for me, it is a step in terms of looking at what we're doing, how can we change our behaviors around food waste, educating people that throwing food out is just not acceptable. And we have actually had businesses who, come on board and join with us, and then because they're now, because previously they were just putting food in the bin at the end of the day and not actually thinking twice about it. After joining FoodPrint, they've actually kind of really taken a look at what they are wasting. They've got data there that can support that for them. And so they've even, cut back on what they're making, or, changed some internal processes. In a weird way, it's bad for business, but good for the overall mission. But we obviously support that, and then they're just still using FoodPrint for those days that things haven't sort of gone to plan, or the inconsistencies that they've had.
I like that you're actually supporting a growing population of us doing this. I don't see a growing population as a disaster.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think that wasn't a question, right?
No.
Yeah.
I had a question for you. What do you think was one of your biggest barriers? Because there's a lot of people in the room, I'd say, who are quite advocates for change, but the tech side for me is certainly a barrier. What was your kind of way to get around that, and also turning an idea that's for social change into a business, and what was your kind of mission for that?
Yeah, I think, like, when it comes to behavior change, it's notoriously difficult. And I think, honestly, even like the behavior change side of things, as well as the business side of things, like, I was very naive coming into this in a lot of ways. And I think if you don't have that level of naivety, then no one would start businesses. I think, I was like, businesses get more money, customers get discounted food. What's not to love about this? Of course, it's going to be something for everyone. There's definitely plenty of barriers, plenty of reasons why people will I was getting like, oh, it's such a great idea. Why would businesses say no to this? And I'm like, well, they come up with a myriad of reasons. Some legitimate, some that seem to just not make any sense at all to us, but that is up to them. I think a lot of it comes down to pride, and that a lot of businesses feel like if they're sort of seen to be having waste or surplus, then they haven't done their jobs right. But anyone that's worked in hospitality knows that that's something that happens every single day, or most, or throughout every week. So yeah, I think cutting through that can be it can be challenging, but I think I was really lucky with the early adopters that I had that joined the app from the business side, and I really targeted, like, we started in Auckland in 2019, and I really targeted, I guess, businesses of a certain level and caliber. And once they started saying yes, then it helped bring on other businesses along the way. So I guess that was sort of a huge part of it, and also targeting businesses that had like-minded values, that I could tell that they weren't going to be wanting their food to go to waste. So yeah, that probably helped things along there. Yeah, again, behavior change, notoriously difficult. Even just sort of cutting through to some people around why food waste is bad, and whether you look at it from the environmental aspect of it, the social aspect of it, or the business financial aspect of it. Some people are just totally closed ears to any which way you pitch it to them. But I think for the most part, we've found that businesses kind of lean into one of the three reasons, or sometimes two of the three. And so it's really a case of chatting to them and working out quickly which of those are going to be the biggest sort of selling points for them. And it is definitely a mixture throughout the businesses that we work with. Yeah, does that kind of answer that? And then I don't think what about the second part?
The tech, how do you keep up with all the changes, and how did you jump into that space except for your coding course?
Yeah, I guess having worked at HelloFresh and sort of seeing that side of things there, I also joke that the Michal that left New Zealand in 2015 would have laughed her head off if you had told her that 2.5 years later she'd be sitting in Stockholm writing lines of code. Like, there was just, that jump was kind of crazy in many, many ways. But yeah, I guess having had that experience and, looking at where sort of jobs were going, what sorts of things that I was interested in doing in the future, that just felt like a really natural step for me at that point. It definitely did not give me the skills to build my app. I probably couldn't write more than a couple of lines of code now if I tried, just because I haven't, it's like any languages, you have to keep them up. But what that did was really helped kind of fill in the gaps, and it allowed me to have enough knowledge to communicate with my development team. And I'm not to say that, it's definitely not to say that that's a must, but it is something that I found really helpful. And I think that, again, as I said during the presentation, like when I met the team that I work with, I just felt like our values really aligned. They really understood the scope of the project that was needed, compared with I have this real clear memory of meeting this other guy who'd been recommended through a friend, and we're like having this chat, and in all fairness, I was probably drip feeding information, like, trying to scope him out, trying to be a little bit protective of my idea, but also knowing that I sort of had to share as much as possible with people. But we're sort of talking about the app side of things, and it was about halfway through the meeting, he just kind of crosses his arms and sits back and goes, "Is it gonna need a back end?" And and I was kind of like, "Oh, you're not the guy." Like, yes, it is. And I could see him just being like, "Oh, this is a real massive project, and I don't quite know if we've got the scope or the skills within to do it." So it was like thank you very much. And next sort of situation there. So yeah, it is like a tricky one, but I think the biggest thing was just talking to people. Like, I was really surprised when I was trying to find developers, but also just connecting with people that might be able to help it different ways. I was so surprised and grateful for how generous people were with their time. And, I would just get introduced to people and say, hey, can we grab a coffee? And, if they couldn't help, that might lead to someone else who could. Yeah, and there's lots of people that I met throughout that time that I'm still in touch with and have become friends with, and all of that. So yeah, just really putting yourself out there and talking to people, I think, was a huge part of it. Yeah.
Oh, go for it, Anna.
I just had it. So you mentioned very briefly data before, and so obviously your app is generating a lot of data about food waste patterns. What are you doing with that? Are you doing that?
Yeah, I think if I'm honest, there's heaps that we could be doing, heaps more than that we could be doing with our data than what we are at the moment. We're a tiny little team of 5, and in 2 weeks' time, that's growing to 6 people, so that's very exciting. But yeah, the eateries that we work with, for the eateries, FoodPrint runs through, and it's like a web-based portal. So they also get a dashboard that has their data on it, so they can see, on any given day, what has sold, what hasn't sold, the value of that. So they can sort of see their patterns there. We, in terms of the businesses that we work with, again, a lot being those kind of daytime or like lunchtime kind of cafe vibes. So we know that the app gets really busy from kind of 1:30 after that lunch rush. And so we do sort of try and steer our customers gently into knowing that that's when the app's going to be most busy. But they also, because things do change on any given day, we're also like, we can't guarantee that you're going to find something that you're going to like on that day as well. So, yeah, it's quite fun to look at that. We also have, for both eateries and consumers, the app will also tell them the emissions that they've saved. So I think it's something we've saved about 200 tons of CO2 emissions through food rescue. So something that I'm also really proud of in that sense. But yeah, there is a lot of conversations happening across the country when it comes to food waste around lack of data. So yeah, we are also looking at how we can contribute some of that to some of those conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions from the floor? Oh, Debbie.
I have sort of a question, sort of a follow-on opportunity. When my son used to be a chef in Takaka, and when he moved to being chefing in Wellington, he could not believe that all of the food waste in preparation, not just the food that was left over, none of it went into composting. He just kept asking, where's the compost bin? No, it just goes in the rubbish. So it's maybe an opportunity for someone like yourself to think about that, the stuff that you don't manage to save, and even the food that's wasted in the prep of everything, instead of going straight into the rubbish, which is where loads of it went, could be going someplace else, like compost.
Yep. There's a few places in Wellington. There's Kai Cycle who are doing that, and using a model that is paid subscription for businesses. It's just trying to get them on board.
Yeah.